Hello everybody, it's Innocent Kristoph Gavin here, and as the title suggests, welcome back to Turnabout Podcast, here for episode 9. Now, what's interesting is that I am actually going to be alone this time. I figured for one of these podcasts, I'm trying to have a different guest on each time. For one of these, I've always wanted to do it just by myself, and I couldn't think of a better topic than this one. It's very current, but it'll last for quite a while until an eventual Ace Attorney analyzation on Spirit of Justice, which will be, I'm not kidding, maybe 5 to 6 years from now. Hopefully YouTube's still around and all that, I'm sure it will be, but, hopefully I'm still able to make some content then. But I just finished Spirit of Justice. The game came out a long time ago. It came out in September of 2016 in North America. And, yeah, I put it off for a while. I got it at launch with all the DLC when it was available. And I played Case 1. Put it down, played Case 2 about 6 months later, put it down, and then I finally picked it up again to finish Case 3, 4, 5, DLC, and the Asinine Attorneys. And that was all within the last month or two. So it's been quite a journey of putting off Spirit of Justice. And before I get into what we're going to do here, well, actually, I will say what I'll do. I'm just going to be going case by case, basically, and then here and there talking about overall trends and the overarching plot and things like that. So with that said, these are massive spoilers for Spirit of Justice. If you have any intentions at all of playing this series, and you haven't played Spirit of Justice, go away, please. It's for your own good. Seriously, I don't mind. So, that's the thing. I will not be spoiling entries from any other Ace Attorney game. So if you're starting out, in some of the earlier titles, like the Phoenix Wright trilogy, you're good. Except for the fact that I'm spoiling Spirit of Justice, and eventually you're going to want to play it, so, yeah. But I just figured I'd mention that I'm only going to be referring to other games in a very general comparison sense. Spirit of Justice is the one that's going to get spoiled rotten. Now, here's the thing. I want to explain why it took me so long to really sit down and finish Spirit of Justice. And it's my fault. It wasn't warranted, but... So I was really disappointed by Dual Destinies, as many of you might know. It's far from the worst game of all time. It's not thoroughly awful. Well, it's not, it doesn't deserve to have like a Sonic 06 legacy or anything like that. It's just, the problem is that it did have really hurt me as an Ace Attorney fan. It really just hurt. And I just had to deal with that for like a few years. When I first played Dual Destinies, I thought it was the greatest thing ever, but we won't get into it. The point is, I really hated Dual Destinies in a sense, and I was just worried that things were going to keep going the same way. We had the same writer, Phoenix, he's still a lawyer for some reason, even though his arc was finished in TNT and then enhanced and super finished in Apollo Justice. There's a reason he's only in non-canon cameos in the Investigations games. He has no point of being around anymore. The only time that I think Phoenix really should be around as a lawyer is in PL vs. AA, because it takes place when? The trilogy. It takes place right after Bridge for the Turnabout, and, well, not necessarily right after, but between Bridge for the Turnabout and the trial of Zach Ramaryi, where he lost his attorney's badge. So it was still the young Phoenix with Maya. Maya came back for a bit, and then she went back to the Crane Village the way it should have been. So, PL vs. A fits in there nicely and all that. You just have to have Maya come along and then go back, which can, feasibly work, with the characters. That shouldn't be too much of an issue. But what's interesting is I I had so little faith in Spirit of Justice. I was like, I'm not looking forward to this coming out. It's gonna suck. I should not have had that mindset to begin with, but I especially shouldn't have, because, as friends have pointed out to me, Spirit of Justice had a great track record. I'm sorry, the Ace Attorney series has had a great track record. I don't want to spoil my thoughts on all of these games because of the eventual Ace Attorney analyzations, but, you know, I mean, I have very little to complain about in terms of big issues with these games, like major problems. There's not that many. You'll find them when we get to them. There's been a couple already, but it's just, you know, I really like this series, and I don't like it when people say, I know this is a quick tangent, but I don't like it when people tell me that, you know, I'm not harsh enough on these games, you know, you're biased. Well, I understand how you feel and how you look at it that way, but the way I look at it is, the reason I love these games so much is because I'm not seeing these flaws. Do you understand what I mean when I say that? Like, I mean, the fact that they are so good, in my opinion, is why I became a fan. It's not the other way around. I'm not blindly defending the series first and then hoping that it's good, you know? So the Ace Attorney series is a really good series, in my opinion. And despite my thoughts on Dual Destinies, the overall consensus for me is, well, the series is, you know, really good. It's mostly all positive. So I should have... Basically, my whole point with that tangent... I'm sorry, guys. I'm used to having someone else here to help me. But the point of that tangent is basically, you know, it was one little dip. Spirit of Justice, I should have maybe not expected, but maybe I should have acknowledged the fact that it very well could have bounced back from Dual Destinies. My overall stance on Spirit of Justice, now we're officially going to get into it, is it was pretty good. It was pretty good. And I mean that just the way it is. I'm not meaning like it's pretty good as in, wow, that was like better than the whole series, you know, because I know when people say things, sometimes it's like hard to really know, but I literally mean it was pretty good. You know, it was pretty good. I would place it above Dual Destinies for sure, like far above it. But it'd probably be in my mid to low range for Ace Attorney, which again is not bad. If you've just heard my tangent a moment ago, you'd know that is not bad by any means. So I had a lot of fun with Spirit of Justice, and I might even consider it being one of my personal favorites, actually. We'll see how that goes, because keep in mind, folks, these are basically first impressions. This video, this podcast episode, it's all just a bunch of first impressions. Do not expect 3A, number whatever, the Spirit of Justice review, to maybe be anything like this. Because I'm not going through as I'm playing, critiquing it. No, I'm just looking to have fun. So keep that in mind, because things could be completely different. Again, I love Dual Destinies. I bought into all the drama and all that, and then once I analyzed it, I was like, shoot, not so good. So that's what I'm talking about here. The same could happen to Spirit of Justice. Same could happen to any of the Ace Attorney games. So this is just like general first impressions, because I've actually gotten a whole lot of people telling me, you know, oh, you know, what did you think of Spirit of Justice? Please let us know when you finish all of it. I'm like, on it, you know. I got so many requests, I was like, Turnabout Podcast episode just for it. A whole hour, you know, just on Spirit of Justice. Why not? Hopefully if you're on a long drive, or you're bored, or grinding in a video game or something, that this will help entertain you in the background. Or you just stare at the thumbnail that I made. That's the image for the whole time. I'm not going to act like I haven't done that for some videos before. I've definitely done that. So, back to Spirit of Justice. I thought it was pretty good. So the overarching theme here is, I read the development history, and it turns out that Yamazaki, the writer of these modern Ace Attorney games, he wanted to quit after Dual Destinies. Excuse me. Because he was so tired and exhausted from working on Dual Destinies, and jeez. And I really can't blame him, because he was in charge of visual assets, he was in charge of the story, there's a new attorney, there's a new prosecutor, you have 3 attorneys to work. Dual Destinies was really ambitious here. I mean, he's doing a lot of the work. The teams making these games are really small. So, how could I blame him? If I were him, I would have fought the one in charge and resigned. But he was convinced by a superior, and also convinced by fans at a recent Comic-Con event, because of the fan passion behind the series, to keep going. But that's awful. Like, that sounds like you don't want to know that going into a game. I'm glad I didn't know that, because you would expect the game to really reek of problems, because it just sounds like yeah, I understand, like, the way the wiki says, it's like, but he got his passion back going to Comic-Con, but I don't buy that, like, I feel like he still wants to be done with the series, and Yamazaki's written a lot of aces. I know he gets a lot of flack, and some of it's definitely well-deserved, but, he's also a human being, and I can tell you that if I had to write all of those Ace Attorney games, I would be done. I'd never want to see another text box again, especially because he was in charge of more than just writing. But going into Spirit of Justice, I mean, that just looks horrible. It looks like the game's gonna stink. Thankfully it did not, though. He really came through for the state of affairs. He did. I'll always prefer Takumi's more subtle writing. A lot of people say, like, a lot of the people who really enjoy the modern Ace Attorney games, like Dual Destiny, Spirit of Justice in particular, they like them because it's more in your face. The storyteller, former guest on this podcast, he pointed this out in his Spirit of Justice review that I just saw. It was fantastic, by the way. And he's absolutely right. Takumi's more subtle, but when you get to Yamazaki, I think the people who don't pay attention as much, I don't like saying it like that. I don't know how else to say it. But those people, they're going to like Yamazaki more because they don't have to work as hard to get the emotion. It's in your face. And that's not necessarily bad by any means. Keep that in mind. I will prefer Takumi's writing, but I think Spirit of Justice is some of Yamazaki's best work in a while. So, the overarching plot is basically Phoenix Wright is, he's still an attorney for some reason, whatever. Don't worry, I got over it during my playthrough. I was like, I just have to accept the fact that he's back, and that's that. So essentially, Phoenix is, he goes over to this kingdom of Kurine, I believe is how you pronounce it, which shockingly fans, let me ask you something. When you first played Spirit of Justice, you're thinking, like, oh, Kingdom of Kurine, I wonder how that's going to tie into Kurine Village. They even go to Kurine Village in Case 5. I got, nothing. Nothing linking the two, pretty much. How is that even possible? Whatever. Definitely taking off points for that. But, you go to the Kingdom of Kurine because Phoenix wants to, he's basically going to tour, but he also finds out that the legal system is in shambles. I mean, even worse than California, which is a parody of the Japanese legal system. So, basically, they haven't outlawed defense attorneys or anything, but they all fled because of the Defense Culpability Act. And I'm not going to try and summarize so much, because you've played this game if you're watching, but, he goes over to Kurine, he defends, I'll be your guide, and, he I guess we'll just start with Case 1, because Phoenix's portrayal as a character in Case 1 was fantastic, and the only reason that's relevant is because I didn't like it in Dual Destinies. I thought Phoenix, the fact that in Case 1 of Dual Destinies, I understand it wasn't his first case back that was reclaimed, but one of his first cases back to law, Phoenix is sweating bullets, he's like, gasp in pain, I can't do it, I'm gonna lose. No. That is not what I'd expect Mr. Wright to be doing by the time Dual Destinies happens. He can't suddenly act like he's from PW again, where this is Turnabout Sisters. It's like, Red White, how do I take him down? No. That's unacceptable writing. I do not tolerate that at all. And the fact that they got that right in most of Spirit of Justice is great. He's like, everyone would constantly remind you, admittedly annoying, Rafa, the Gallery, your Magistry, they were all like, Phoenix, you will die. You know, if you lose your client and you will die. It's like, the one thing that was good that came out of that was that Phoenix, he didn't hesitate. He was like, I have no problem with this. He even went in his like confidence pose. You know, he was like, I don't give a damn because I'm not losing. I'm just not going to lose. That confidence that we saw in Apollo Justice in the Zachramari trial, you know, where Phoenix was like really overcome. Where he's like, Clavier, newbie. Look at him. He's just some punk. You know, no problem. Of course, he lost, but you know, it's kind of nice to see some of that again, because I thought that was really in character for Phoenix back in Apollo Justice, because he took down, I mean, he won Farewell My Turnabout, and he won Bridge to the Turnabout by that point. I mean, his reputation must have been fantastic in California, maybe even the whole country, and he deserved to have some confidence. It also led to some of his demise, but that makes interesting writing, you know, and he's a lot more calm in present Apollo Justice because of it. A lot more laid back, even too much, for his own good. So I'm happy to see Spirit of Justice continue that in Case 1 especially. Phoenix he didn't really have a problem with what was going on. He was like, okay. He still went in his like head down pose, I believe. You know, there's some things I would have changed, but that's like nitpicking, you know, whatever. I think they did a good job. I think the judge of Karine is actually really interesting. I thought the judge in P.O. vs. A.A. in Labyrinthia was also very interesting, where they felt like a little more fleshed out than the California judge. I would say the same for Your Magistry. He was great. I liked him. I liked him a lot. He wasn't as harsh or foreboding as the rest of the court, but he, you know, was still stern. So I enjoyed him quite a bit, and I will miss him. And then there was Albee. Albee was okay. You know, I don't have a lot to complain about with Albee, because whenever he was on screen, I was entertained, but he wasn't winning any points for writing. He didn't really seem all that interesting, because there wasn't really much to him. I mean, him and his dog, you know, they're cute and all, but I don't really have much to say on Albee. I will say that Gaspin Payne basically becoming royalty was really, really funny. I was not expecting that, so that was neat. And I guess something we could talk about is that Spirit of Justice uses 3D models a lot more. And we have 3D model cutscenes sometimes. There's a big problem. The frame rate is garbage when it happens for most of them. And that's unfortunate, but they were really pushing 3DS hardware, because those are some really good looking models, and you can tell that they have those models rendering the whole time. You know, for like the panning around the court scenes and all that, it's like, oh, there's Edgeworth's shoes, you know, it's like, they're always there, and the fact that that's what I mean by this game really pushes 3DS hardware, because the models are so detailed, the backgrounds are so thorough. I'm sure they could have been more optimized, the cutscenes themselves, but I appreciate the ambition quite a lot. They also try and do PO vs. AA things, like there's a lot of stuff borrowed from PO vs. AA in Spirit of Justice, like sometimes there'll be voice clips in non-cutscenes, like, a dragon never yields, and things like that. They also borrowed, what else did they borrow? I mean, I love PO vs. AA so much, that's why I mention it, but they borrowed, what was it? It was on the tip of my tongue. What did they borrow? I don't remember. Anyways, I remember. Multiple characters on screen. Dual Destinies did it a bit. It was funny, though, because when you see Queen Garan, like, and then all of her, the guards come on screen, it's just like, the frame rate's just like, all the way down to, like, nothing. again, pushing hardware, appreciate the attempt, and it looked really nice at times. So that's great. I guess while we're at on presentation, the anime cutscenes, I thought they were not good. The animation studio, I believe, is the same one that is doing the Phoenix Wright anime, like the anime for Ace Attorney. And I have so many things to complain about with that anime. I'm sorry. And I have similar things here. These are better, but maybe that's only because there's so little in comparison. Like, I think the intro is nice. I think the prologue to Spirit of Justice, visually looks okay. But my biggest problem with the animated cutscenes, and most of these, keep in mind the anime ones, most of them are the case intros. And my problem with these is that these are some of the lamest cutscenes I've ever seen. Dual Destiny's anime cutscenes were cringe-worthily bad. Not a word I know. Neither is analyzation, huh? But I thought the Dual Destiny's cutscenes were thoroughly garbage, and they were so easy to make fun of. I do it all the time with my friends. Objection! You know, like Sam Riegel, like, first take was used, and the judge is like, "Why, it's you!" And then, like, dramatic pan. It's like, ugh, just get that out. It's like, Your Honor, the defense was born ready! And then the Hugh O'Connor cry. But Spirit of Justices are better, but my problem is that they're still not good. But they're bad for different reasons. I feel like Spirit of Justice cutscenes are just boring. You know, like, take the Case 4 intro, nothing really happens. You see the old man counting, and then he dies. It's not a lot going on. I mean, the image, like what we saw in that cutscene, sets up the crime scene photo, which will become evidence in that trial. It's like, okay, yeah, I've seen this before. Now it's in a picture. You know, okay. But that's it. Like, there's just nothing to these. Like, Turnabout Revolutions was really disappointing. It's supposed to be like some parody TV show. Whatever, you know? So I think Dual Destinies were a lot more interesting to begin with. I will say that. So there's ups and downs. But overall, the presentation of Spirit of Justice is actually extremely good, because one thing I really appreciate is they redid all the 3D models of the main characters, and they look great. Apparently, they started them from scratch too. They look even better, and they look just fine in Dual Destinies. So, you know what? I mean, that's important, right? It's basically a visual novel, and you'll be looking at these characters a lot. So, even if they're just a little bit better, I mean, that really counts. So, I think Phoenix had the best improvements as well. Really, I can't put my finger on it, but Athena looks really, really good too. I can't really think about what the changes were. I'd have to like study them closely, but I was just like, wow, that's better than I remembered, kind of thing. Back to case 1. The Foreign Turnabout. I did not enjoy this case. Admittedly, I played it like 2 years ago, and I honestly don't remember a lot. So let's take this with a grain of salt, but I don't like it. There's not much wrong with it, but I'll get my issues out of the way. My first issue is the pacing. I feel like this case did not need to be 3 hours, or whatever it was. It was way too long. It's too simple of a premise to warrant that much time. They really try to stretch it out, and that's never a good thing. I understand they want to give us a lot of content, you know, and really try to give us as much as they can out of these cases, but if you want to do that, look at Turnabout Target. That's the first case of investigations too. From my memory, that's like a 5-hour case, but the pacing was excellent. So there's no waste of time. It's just as complex as it warrants, right? I've always said in Ace Attorney analyzation, you know, the more complex, the better, as long as there's none of the downsides that come with that are apparent. That's why I enjoy things in, say, Justice for All more than PW. Those cases in JFA, more complex, but admittedly those did have some pacing issues, and that's the word, it's pacing. You know, Yamazaki, I feel like every sentence Takumi writes, Yamazaki has to make 5. You know, it's, I don't know why. It's not horrible, it's not a problem, it's probably not even true, let's be honest. I'm just making that up. But I do feel like the pacing is way too slow in the Fort and Turnabout. Length should have been shortened. It's such a stupidly simple crime. Who, like, what? It's not that, it doesn't warrant this amount. Even with all of the Phoenix You Will Die drama, even with the Divination Seance tutorial, it still doesn't need to be that long. And I was engaged by Phoenix's excellent portrayal, and Gasp in Pain was entertaining, but it's like, I'm still bored to tears. Now, please be understanden, that guy. The Jesus basically looks like Jesus Christ. He was alright. Great breakdown, great like transformation. He was good. I really liked the music that went along with him too. So he was interesting. I don't like how they showed him in the case intro though. But well, that's better than Night Night Alderman, Sweet Dreams. Always better than that. But I don't have much more to say about case 1 in terms of like quote unquote first impressions. It's just, I didn't really like it. It was one of the weaker first cases for me. I'm actually that's the case out of all these I'm most interested to analyze one day. I want to really see if I can really prove what I'm feeling, or maybe disprove what I'm feeling. I'd like to figure that out, but it beats the first Turnabout, but that's not very difficult. And I think that's where I'd place. I'd probably put second last for first cases. Would I call it bad? I want to, but it's been so long. Now, case 2, the magical Turnabout. We turn it over back to California with Apollo Justice and Trucy Wright and Athena Sykes. You know, no Black Hole yet, but no Clavier. But we got some of these characters here. Now, the magical Turnabout I thought is fantastic. I love the magical Turnabout. It's really, really good. Really good. The investigations were super solid. Like, the banter between Apollo and Athena was fantastic. I think Athena and Apollo have a very good chemistry. I think they really do. I like that in the Monstrous Turnabout, and I also love it even more here. So, you know, because Apollo Justice, you know, what makes him different from Phoenix is, like, he acts, you know, fairly responsibly, but, you know, Apollo's, like, the true, like, straight man. Like, he's the most reliable. And then Athena is pretty eccentric, but also more down-to-earth than the likes of, like, maybe Emma from the older games, you know. It's just the way that those two characters get along and not get along is really interesting. So this case, you know, we have Trucy Wright as the defendant, which hasn't happened before, so that's interesting. And I wasn't actually in support of that right away. I was like, okay. But it really worked out. Trucy Wright in Dual Destinies was a joke. So, I mean, she just shouldn't have even been there. But they really did something special with her here. They actually developed her. We have Trope Grimarye back. We have her magic show back. That's where the crime happened. Unfortunately, there's a retcon. I'm not the biggest hater of retcons as long as it can kind of retroactively fit in. And this one does. But Trope Grimarye, you know, it's put back in the spotlight. And there's even this image of you have Magnifi, Thalassa, Zack, Valent, and then you have Roos, Mr. Roos, on there too. And you're like, well, who's that? I don't remember that from AJAA. That's because he wasn't there. With that said, now, while obviously Mr. Roos would have been mentioned in Apollo Justice if, this plot point was thought of back then, because you can't just not mention one of the members. All of the members were important to that game in some sense. So it is a retcon, but it's okay, like that. It can work. We can just retroactively pretend that Mr. Roos was, on all of the advertisements in AJ. Maybe he was mentioned a bit and say, but he wasn't very significant because he got fired early on or something. That's fine. So I don't have a big problem with that. Retcons can be a slippery slope, though. Don't get me wrong. I prefer not to have them, but this was okay. I apologize for saying so much. So then we have Mr. Roos himself. I thought he was, he's a jerk. Red, white. He was okay. I thought Mr. Roos was pretty interesting. I liked his animations a lot, especially the one where he was waving the dollar bills, fanning himself. And my problem is his motive was pretty weak. Something else the storyteller pointed out. But overall, I did enjoy his character because, more Grimmari. That's always good in my book. I really like the Grimmaris. I like learning because they seem like such an innocent group, and then you analyze them and you find out what happens. They're all horrible. What an interesting twist. That's why I really like Trope Grimmari. Well, Valen I can sympathize with the most. He's definitely the least jerk. Well, and then of course Thalassa is completely innocent. So, yeah, wonderful lady. And, Trucy just wants to continue on the legacy. When things aren't looking good, she completely breaks down and cries in the detention center. It's a pretty popular scene from the game, and I do think it's just as good as everyone says. Nayuta Sadmadhi, the prosecutor of Spirit of Justice, is introduced in this case. I know he's really divisive. I love him. I love Nayuta Sadmadhi. I think he's fantastic. Really. A little too similar to Francisca. But I also really like Francisca. I know. Poor reason, but Nayuta was interesting. So, first of all, I thought he was a girl immediately. And then I looked at the profile. And then I was like, he? So, I don't know, that's not really important, but I'm just trying to think of first impressions. Excellent design, of course. He's like a religious monk from Khura'in. Very respected, just like a lot of prosecutors. Very respected from a group of people. Kulveer respected by fans of his band. And Edgeworth respected by the prosecutor's office, Dual Destinies and onward, because he's the high prosecutor. They better respect him. And then you have Nayuta's banter, and we'll talk more about this in Case 4, but Nayuta really bounces off other characters well. Because you can have Phoenix pretty much say anything, and certain prosecutors, like Godo, are kind of like one note in response. Nayuta really shakes it up. He's always one to insult you, which is something we've seen since Miles Edgeworth and PW, but I felt like he was more varied in how he did it. Sometimes he would actually torture you, like he would, throw his necklace on Phoenix Apollo or Athena. I think it happens to all of them once, and he so he has some real magical powers. That's cool. He'll and then the Satara. Oh, that was terrible. Satara. That's a little better. And he would do the and then he would say the Satara. He's entertaining, right? His desk slam, he takes to the necklace and goes, I like the butterfly that comes in. Great animation, great model. Interesting character. Now this is weird because a lot of people who like Nayuta, I believe they like him mostly for how he kind of changes near the end of Case 5. This might surprise you, and this is definitely something I'll say in the eventual review, but I don't like that at all. I thought that was the weakest part of Nayuta Sadmati, was his, conclusion to his arc, because it was such a weak conclusion. Honestly, if he just stayed a jerk, that might have been better. I know that's quite the claim, but if he literally didn't change, that would probably be better, because obviously the best outcome is if he did change, but they really execute it well, and by that I mean make it more pronounced, put more time into it. Do the old Yamazaki, put it in your face method. That's actually one thing I would have totally been put it in my face, and they really didn't, which was weird, because that's something Godo's change. You got a whole few minutes on the prosecuting bench to talk, Clavere's Kristoph, it's over, nothing for this guy, pretty much. I guess we assume he gets along with Apollo because he's staying and working with him in the agency, and that was really well handled. The conversation with Apollo, to stay in Kurine. So I'm sure they'll get along better. Post Spirit of Justice, I'm sure they are. But I preferred him when he was an antagonist. I really did, because I thought his writing was stronger. Wow, we've already been going for 40 minutes. I'll speed up. The crime itself, very interesting. 3D 3D models, yay. Bonnie and the sister clone thing, they're alright. They're okay. Pacing was great in the Magical Turnabout. Pretty quick, but not too quick. It was just the nice speed. I felt like I was getting things done in the investigation segments, but there was still a lot of meat to it. Same for the trials. It's okay, we got a few minutes of banter with Nayuta. Next cross-examination, talk a bit, objection. Next cross-examination. It was good. It was a good flow. I liked that. It didn't feel formulaic. It was still, you still weren't sure when you're gonna cross-examine and things like that, which is good. But I thought the pacing was really well done. And Mr. Roos's breakdown was a great breakdown for the post, the Dual Destinies, psychological breakdowns. That was really impressive. Again, with the presentation. So, as for Apollo Justice himself, he was okay. He was the straight man. He was very mean in his personal thoughts. These are all things I come to expect from Apollo Justice. He was alright. So that's pretty much the Magical Turnabout. The Right of Turnabout is Case 3. I've never felt so polarized. I mean, this case has some of the most interesting things I've ever seen in the series, and some of the worst things I've ever seen. I don't know where it falls, folks, but I feel like it falls more on the negative side. Pacing? Garbage. Horrible pacing. First investigation. You learn nothing. You talk to people, you meet Maya, she gets thrown in jail. Nothing happens. Literally nothing happens. In the second half, it picks up. The second half of the case, but Dats was an interesting character. I really like him. I liked learning about Maya's interactions with Belieb, Tarust, the monk that died, the second victim. But I enjoyed Raifa a lot. This is probably her biggest case, role in the game. Great interactions with Phoenix, but pacing was so bad that I pretty much enjoyed nothing. They really wanted to get me near the end with that breakdown with Tarust and Belieb, and that was good. I liked how this enhanced the Defense Culpability Act by basically making that the villain of the case. That's pretty clever, but they also could have done it a little better, as the storyteller again pointed out. This case is bloated. I think that's the best way to put it. It doesn't need to be as long as it is because nothing happens, right? This is speculation, but I truly believe that Yamazaki is afraid to make some of these cases short. But it's got to be quality over quantity, folks. Not every game's going to be like AAI 1 and AAI 2, where the cases are all long and they're all great. You know, it's not always going to happen, and it doesn't need to. So, that's my very general look at the Right of Turnabout. I will add 2 more things. The look more into how the religious society of Khura'in works was interesting. That was a thumbs up. Thumbs down, Maya Fey. Oh, no. There's no reason she needs to be here. There's no reason that we need to have Maya Fey in another Ace Attorney game after TNT. Look who was right. Because here we are. And, you know, her writing is consistent with her old appearances. She has shown she's grown up a little bit more, which I like. But it's just more of the same. And it's not enough of a change that really makes me go, wow, I'm so glad Maya's here like the entire fandom did. No reason. Nope. Shouldn't be here. At all. Ever again. So, great job. The Right of Turnabout. It's a giant mess of really good ideas, really bad ideas, all stitched together with glue. Like Elmer's glue. So, really want to like it. I just can't. Now, I actually really like Case 4, Turnabout Storyteller. I think this is probably the most disliked case in the game, and I can understand why, because it has literally nothing to do with anything relating to the overarching plot. But I've never been one to complain about, what am I looking for? To complain about filler cases. I don't care. I don't care what's filler. I don't care what isn't. Like, it's just, if it's a good case, it's a good case. And this one's all trial based, so it's consistent with the mainline Ace Attorney games, where if it has 5 cases, the 4th case is pretty short. Okay. We've seen this before in TNT. You know, so it's all trial. Blackwell is back. He's actually acting as a defense attorney of sorts, more of an assistant to Athena. He's fantastic. I think this is, like, if you ask me after his arc got wrapped up in Dual Destinies, how do you handle Blackwell? I wouldn't be able to give you an answer, because the way Spirit of Justice did it is probably the best way it ever could have gone. So, great job, guys. Like, that, the way you took an already finished character, Blackwell, you wanted to bring him back, I understand. Well, you did a good job, too. I really thought that he was different enough to where it wasn't like, here he is again. But he also retained a lot of that coldness he had. But it was really helpful to the case. I thoroughly enjoyed Blackwell's appearance. I enjoyed Athena's appearance as well. Not quite as good as Blackwell in terms of a post-DD, how should they be kind of thing, but still pretty good. It was good. I didn't think I needed to play as her. Going into this game, I thought it would just be Phoenix and Apollo, but it's like, nope, we gotta cram Athena, and it's like, alright. It was okay. The side characters I really liked. I liked Gairu, I believe her name would pronounce Gairu, the killer, basically. And Uendo was fantastic. Really tied into Athena's psychology background, which was good. Didn't feel forced. I thought that felt really appropriate. Made playing as Athena feel useful, and that was good. Prosecutor Sudmadhi versus Athena versus Blackwell. Hilarious. Really funny, because he's probably the harshest on Athena. Like, that yellow jacket, like, looks so childish. Like, things like that. It's so funny. It really is. And that case also had good pacing. It knew it wasn't complex, so it also didn't really stall time either. It was very solid. I have very few complaints about the case, But I will say it also wasn't, like, super good. It's not going to be, like, in one of my higher lists for cases. You know, it was because, it's just not that complex. But for what it was, Turnabout Storyteller, I liked it. I liked it quite a lot. And it was really funny. And it wasn't like Dual Destinies where I'm laughing at how horrible it is at times. Like, ironically, I thought this case was unironically pretty funny. Like, even jokes like the one, like, Athena's like, come on, Judge, like, you'll get to see her balloons again. Even that one got me. Like, I could definitely see it as being forced for some, but I cracked a smile throughout that case quite a bit. So, yeah. And then there's case 5, Turnabout Revolution. This case is kind of like a 2-for-1 deal, which I really like. You got the beginning part in California, and you got the part in Karine. In California, you have Paul Atchison killed the researcher who was trying to keep the Founder's Orb. And this is something I like, is because case 5, especially the first half, connects back to case 1. I'm sorry, we haven't seen that a lot in the Ace Attorney series. Investigations 2, Investigations 1, those come to mind, but Peel vs. A, but that's, like a latent structure with chapters, so it doesn't really count, I guess. No, I really liked the whole, is it the Founder's Orb? Is it, this? It's kind of interesting how they handled that. So I thought Paul was a very interesting character. As someone who's pretty involved in politics these days, I really enjoyed seeing this disgusting politician, really riffing on politics. And that was good. Like, that was quite a surprise. Great theme, by the way. So Paul was very entertaining. I thought Army Buff, or Sarge, was a fantastic character. One of my new favorite, like, one-off characters, honestly. She's had a hard background. You can really sympathize with her. The writing in that regard was really good. And keep in mind, this is only the first half of the case. And it's all really fleshed out. Apollo's in charge of this. I was not expecting Apollo to take the finale case at all. I thought it would just be Phoenix, but hey, that's fine by me. So I thought everything surrounding the incident in California was extremely polished. I mean, if it ended there, it wouldn't really be complex enough for a final case. Although that is arbitrary. Let's keep that in mind. I wouldn't have been too disappointed. Apollo's characterization was great in this case. Athena was more shoved to the side, but, she was fine. Emma Skye, I haven't mentioned Emma yet, but I will, because she's a part of this. Emma's nice to have around, but I don't like that she got her job, because I thought it was really cool in Apollo Justice that they had the guts to dash her dreams, made her more relatable to Phoenix in that game. Remember that? That was cool, because you didn't expect it, and a more, like, pessimistic adult we haven't really seen before or since Emma Skye in Apollo Justice. So the fact that she's all cheery again, like she was in her high school days in Rise from the Ashes, is like, well, it's just a retread, and Maya's already in the game. So other than her cheerfulness, Emma's character is literally just science, which has always been the case, but I don't know. I mean, why not make her more unique? Why did she get the job? It doesn't make any sense. It's almost like they, like, regret what they decided to do in Apollo Justice. It's kind of weird. Like, I mean, if that's how they feel, like, oh, we made a mistake in Apollo Justice with that, that's fine. Like, they have their opinion on that. That's totally fine. They're in charge here. They make the decisions. But it's just it's less the fact that they disagree with me, maybe. Like, they might disagree with me on that. It's more the fact that they're backpedaling that makes me not like it, if that makes sense. You follow? Maybe. I know, I've been really off my rocker today with all these ums. I'm sorry, but if we continue on to the Karine. So, yeah, the first part of Case 5, fantastic.
Then we get to Corine, and everyone flies over except Trucy. I thought that was kind of funny. I was like, sorry, Trucy. Edgeworth appears because he has to, for some reason, because to keep the fans awake, asleep at night. So he adds nothing. But whatever, he's here. The tension is great in Case 5. We meet Dirk in California. I don't have enough time to really go into this, but Dirk is fantastic. I think, I as the storyteller pointed out, he's pretty much just a slightly inferior Hobo Phoenix, because they have a lot of similarities, but, you know, even slightly less, Dirk is still really good. You know, he's a great dad. He's a strong man, strong-willed, courageous, and he's also not pointed out as flawless, and I really like that. He's not like some flawless figure. He's not invincible, you know. He's not like, he doesn't have like those like protagonist invincibility traits. He's just a really good man, and who would argue with that? Like who wouldn't want to help out someone who has that kind of character, right? His relationship with Apollo was really good. Apollo's like first really cold to him. Again, that's something that I would see AJAA Apollo saying, so that's good. We're keeping things consistent here. If you noticed, I really like characterization being consistent. Like, things can develop, but you can't forget the roots, right? So, you know, again, I don't have much time to go into this, but just know that I do really like Dirk. I like everything that he went through with Apollo, the whole cave incident, everything. It was really good. Really, really good. He meets with Inga because Inga, the Justice Minister, Minister Inga kidnapped Maya Fey, which was surprising. I mean, you knew that guy was a jerk before, but oh geez. And then what I was actually shocked by was the Queen was actually completely against Inga. Like really disapproving of his plans and all that. So it wasn't like the whole thing was corrupt. We later find out that's not true. But it was a nice surprise right there. I'm going to jump ahead a bit, but when the truth comes out that Dirk died and was channeled the whole time, I think that's one of the best twists in the entire series. I was not expecting that. I was not at all expecting that. I'm kind of tearing up right now. I don't want to... Jeez, yeah, I don't want to go into that. It's too emotional, but Apollo's breakdown was fantastic. Wow, you know, that was a way to go. Queen Garen, interesting opponent. The Queen Amara, interesting. The whole soldiers are all pointing at him. You're gonna hate me for this, but if I were writing this series and I was really tired of working on these games like Yamazaki, you know what I would have done? Because you know those dialogue boxes when the guards come in, they have rifles point blank at everybody, and Phoenix and Apollo, you know, spout the, you know, we're gonna fight for the truth stuff. You know, I'm sure you remember that. If it were me, being Yamazaki, I would have had them killed. I know. I just think that would have really sealed the deal. I thought that would have been really cool. Because I know the whole point is that they have to win for Dirk and to make his revolution happen. So it would be disappointing to see that not happen. I understand how important that is. But that could also be even more devastating. What if this was the end? You know, like Athena and Trucy, like maybe like they say later, like they were about to jump out. I'm sorry, Trucy comes, yeah. Maybe it was Maya, but they were like gonna jump out and try and fight the guards. What if they like attempt to, and then as soon as they see that, Phoenix and Apollo murdered? I mean, you can't argue that would have been pretty emotional, and that would pretty much be how the game would end. And then the game would continue, and their legacy is that they died for the truth. I mean, that would be pretty powerful. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe that would convince Edgeworth to truly listen to what he said in investigations too, and things like that. Like, that could have been interesting. I can't help but think about how cool that would have been. But unfortunately, they weren't going to take that risk. And, rightfully so. Dirk's revolution will live on, and that is good. And we also like seeing these people alive, right? We don't want Phoenix or Apollo to die. I guess I'll close out by saying for Turnabout Revolution is that the stakes were so high throughout, especially near the end. We need a backpedal. And I think my biggest thing with Spirit of Justice is, while I really liked it, I really did, and it was pretty good in terms of critique for a first impression, I want Ace Attorney 7 to go back to simpler times, where there's no overarching plot. Let's go back to the PW days. Let's just make it simple for a game, because the stakes are getting too high. There's no way they're going to top this without it getting laughably ridiculous. So why don't we just have 5 only sort of connected cases back to the basics? And then you can really work on switching between the attorneys, because if they're all unrelated cases in a way, that would have few issues in my mind. So that's what I want as an addendum to Turnabout Podcast episode 5, where we talked about Ace Attorney 7, but it's funny I say that about PW, because guess what? That's what the DLC case basically is. Turnabout Time Travel is one of my new favorite cases. Again, it's not it's not complex enough to be top tier, but it also had very few flaws. Kind of like Turnabout Storyteller, but I think this is way better than Turnabout Storyteller. This case feels like a lost PW case. Not only do you have Phoenix and Maya, and you got Edgeworth, but it feels like the old days. But the character interpretations for a post-Dual Destinies world are still good. Edgeworth shows some signs near the end that he learned things from investigations too, something Dual Destinies did not show. So that's good. There are a couple lines I don't like Maya says, "Oh, Edgeworth, he's never changed." That one hurts. That shows that's not good. But overall, you can see even in the case length, even in the complexity of Turnabout Time Travel, it feels like Turnabout Samurai, or Turnabout Sisters, or maybe even Goodbyes. Maybe not quite as detailed as Goodbyes, but it's kind of like that back to basics approach, where we're just going to have an interesting case. And you know what? It really worked. The time travel twist was really cool, because of course it didn't actually happen. Just like people say, hey, they know what they're doing. That was great. I loved Ellen Wyatt. I loved Soren Sprocket. I loved everything surrounding those people. The villain was quite good. Mr. Pierce. Wow. That was a fun case. Great setting. Larry Butts was actually really good. Not expecting that. I thought that was going to be really cringy. I was like, uh-oh, post-Dual Destinies Larry. But the way he interacts with Miles and Phoenix and how they reminisce back to the elementary school days, that was fine. Pandering to nostalgia for sure, but it worked out. So Turnabout Time Travel, critiquing it, very solid. Personally, one of my new favorites. I just really like it. I don't know. I guess sometimes it can just be that simple, but that really made me say, hey, next Ace Attorney game, let's forget about this whole revolution, phantom serial killing. Let's get back to the basics, because sometimes simpler is better. No government conspiracies, from the crossover. It's let's take it back to the basics, the basics of the case, if you will. Great track, by the way. And I guess I'll close out Spirit of Justice with 2 more things. We'll quickly touch on Asinine Attorney, and then we'll quickly touch on the soundtrack, because I forgot to mention that. The Asinine Attorneys, I think they're about an hour each, one for Phoenix, one for Apollo. They're not, interestingly, they're non-canon, comedies. I mean, maybe I had terrible expectations, but I was expecting like laugh tracks and like jokes, like you present like fake evidence. Like I thought it was going to go off the wall. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Again, maybe my expectations were just being stupid. It was funny, but it was more grounded than I expected. So the one for Phoenix, basically he thinks there's a terrorist, and it turns out it was all fake, and Phoenix didn't know, which looks really embarrassing. But again, this is all non-canon. Miles Edgeworth is in Orion for some reason. Very, very, very strange. And, Phoenix thinks there's a terrorist, and he says he wants Princess Rayfur. Everyone dies. But to stall for time, he pretends that Pearl Fey is, and you're actually cross-examine Pearl. Heck, there's even a cross-examination with Albie and Pearl at the same time. Like, they pass dialogue boxes. That's something we haven't seen that much. And you're actually trying to prove to Edgeworth, someone who's met Pearl Fey many times, that she's Princess Rayfur, and it's quite funny. Good jokes. I think that one was a lot funnier than the Apollo one, but the Apollo one I actually liked more, just in terms of what it entailed. So it's in California. Kristoph Gavin is prosecutor, but again, this is non-canon, remember. I'm guessing they were happy to use those dual Destinies models again for Clavier, because barely used them in Dual Destinies, so they're like, yay, money well spent. We can use it again. Clavier was fine. He seemed pretty in tune to himself from Apollo Justice. Not as accurate, but again, it's Asinine Attorney. Like, I'll lighten up on the critique a bit, But Apollo was very, very well portrayed. Very mean on the inside, even on the outside a bit. It's actually, unfortunately, it's not very themed around Apollo Justice. Phoenix's, I felt, was kind of themed around him because it was in Orion and he's defending there, but it's more themed around Dual Destinies, actually, which was interesting. Basically, you have to figure out where what Rayfa saw on TV, because she has an extra day sent by Inga to visit America, and she doesn't know where to go, but she saw on TV a location she forgot, but she really wants to go to what she saw. So you have to try and figure it out. So you call Athena, who's in Ninetales Vale, the location of the monster's turnabout. That was cool. You even see Jinxie again. That was fine. I was fine with that. I mean, it's Dual Destinies. Gavin hates all of it. No, that's not true. I was like, oh, cool. Back to Ninetales Vale. Sure. So we got some lore, about the nine-tailed fox and the yokai and all that. And then we go to, is it Trucy or Emma? I think it's Emma, at the Penrose, something like that, the theater that the magical turnabout takes place. Unfortunately, we don't get to go to the Cosmos Space Center, even though you get a brochure for it. I was like, dang it, I want to see that place again. That was like the center of Case 4 and Case 5 of Dual Destinies. I was like, oh, dang, it's like, can we meet, like, I don't know, one of the robots? Like, I'm sure Aura Blackwell's, like, thrown away, but, like, Cosmos probably wouldn't be there himself, but, like, somebody, like, I don't know. Like, could we have gone back, please? I just thought that was a cool location in Dual Destinies, but Asinine Attorneys, they're fine. I think they're worth the price that they are. It's interesting. It was fine. It was fun. It was just lighthearted fun. Nothing to write home about, but gave me a few laughs. Now, lastly, we'll talk about the soundtrack. I think this is one of the best soundtracks in the entire series. Same with Dual Destinies, actually. It's like, the last three ones we have in America are like my top. PL Versailles, Dual Destinies, and Spirit of Justice. I think they're my favorites. Although ones like Investigations games, they come close. Wow. I mean, this soundtrack, coming from a music major as myself, this is what I'm talking about, folks. Like, this is what I need. This is what I want to hear. It's a lot more, like, digital, as in, like, it's not orchestrated. It's a lot more focused on, like, digitalized sounds. Contrary to Dual Destinies, more like Apollo Justice Ace Attorney soundtrack, kind of. It's, like, closest to that. They use some of the same or similar synths. They're just upgraded, so... You know, my preference is orchestrated in general, but, I mean, when these compositions are that good and the harmonies are that good and things like that, I'm very, very pleased with this soundtrack. It is a lot more subdued. It's not as loud or in your face as others. Excuse me, which I think is why it got some negative... excuse me again. Which is why I think it got some negative reception at first, but I'm glad to see a lot of people have grown to like it because I think it is fantastic. And I'm going to be using it all throughout this video. So, yeah. Folks, that is just my first impression of Spirit of Justice. You know, you were wondering what I thought of it, and I apologize for all the ums and all that. I just kind of record this on a whim. But that is it for me. Turnabout Podcast episode 9 featuring myself. This will be the only one I'm doing solo, at least I think. So yeah, please support this podcast. I'm hoping it picks up more views because it's taken a lot of time to meet people, get to know these people, arrange times we can record it, edit it. It's taken a long time to get to this. It's taken a long time to get to the final product, the actual upload of these podcasts, even though all I'm doing is recording. There's not a lot of editing, but it's all the other stuff that's pretty annoying. So, well, it's not annoying to recruit new guests. Trust me, I love having people on. It takes a while. So, if you're watching this video and you like Turnabout Podcast, please share the playlist with people you know. Post it on the Ace Attorney Reddit. Post it in the Ace Attorney Discord server. Post it places, you know, to friends, please. I don't want to look like... I mean, I will post these places, but there's only so much I can do without looking like a complete desperate punk. Like, in the most blunt way possible. So, please, if you like this podcast, like, let's get this thing around. Please. Share the playlist, share the episode, all that jazz. Maybe you want to share one with a guest in it, maybe your favorite episode so far. How about that? Or the playlist, the whole Turnabout Podcast playlist. But please help me out there if you could. Hit the like button. Tell me what you thought of Spirit of Justice in the comments, or tell me your reactions to what I said. All things like that, I'd be very interested in seeing. With that said, that will close this episode of Turnabout Podcast. And I will see you sometime soon, maybe a few weeks for the next one. So, until then, stay tuned.